Here we are with part 2 of working with VoiceThread. And again, for those of you who maybe didn't see my part 1, I'm showing this in the Blackboard shell because Blackboard is the course management software that my university uses. So we're starting here again with a finished Blackboard assignment, but I'm going to toggle over to a different class and show you what happens when you create a VoiceThread assignment from scratch. So first of all, if you're not in Blackboard, you may have to find VoiceThread in a different part of your course management software. But for Blackboard users, under Build Content, you can click VoiceThread. And then for those of you who've already used Blackboard for regular quote-unquote assignments, it's going to seem pretty similar. So, VoiceThread test assignment. Excuse any typos that may happen. And I have some just like content that I'm going to try and grab from over here. So I can paste in some content directly from a Word doc or an InDesign doc, whatever it may be. I think that this isn't particularly a VoiceThread. This is, for those of us who are design faculty, this is one of our big pet peeves, is that Blackboard is not perfect in terms of formatting and stuff. So I will probably go back and do some formatting here because I get a little bit annoyed with what Blackboard does. I won't do any more than this right now, but you can certainly do that the same way you would a normal assignment, okay? So this is where I put the directions, and I try and be really clear with steps and then bulleted points under those, okay? And then in this case, I want the students not just to upload their work, but I also want them to comment on 2 of their classmates' voice threads using the audio feature. So in this case, I have included that right here so that they know that they need to do that. And I think I mentioned this in the last video. I do just tell people to comment on their classmates who don't already have comments first, and I've found that that works fine. Okay. If you needed to attach a file, this is where you would do it. Down here is the thing that if you've used VoiceThread for something else, or maybe even used it as part of a face-to-face class but not worried about Grade Center, this is the difference. So here I am going to click Enable Evaluation, yes. I'm going to do 100 points, and I've had a lot of questions from people about Grade Center and weighted grades, which is a topic, like a much longer, more broad topic in terms of another subject that we can get into, but I would just say for now, if you're not an experienced Blackboard user, do 100 points. Let the grade be visible to students, yes. In an online environment, I think one of the things that's really tough is that you have to assess kind of everything, or there's no way to show that students have done something. And so students do end up maybe a little bit more grade focused, especially undergrads. I'm going to do a due date. And, I might do 2 weeks in advance. And then in an online learning environment, especially if we have an asynchronistic experience where students are not necessarily expecting to have to be all, say, in a WebEx or a Zoom meeting, I usually do 11:59 as the due date for all of my assignments. Students get used to that, and there's no real reason for it to be earlier. I don't do 2 in the morning because invariably a bunch of people do submit at 2 in the morning anyway. And I figure if I did 2 in the morning, some of those people just probably wouldn't get the work done. So I leave all of this empty. You can sunset an assignment and a VoiceThread assignment the same way you'd sunset a regular Blackboard assignment. That just means it disappears after a certain amount of time or appears at a certain amount of time. And for those of you who haven't watched my other videos, this is Blackboard Ultra running in a classic environment. So what you see if you're running pure ultra might be slightly different. I usually just leave the assignments up, and the reason I do that is that if somebody is late, they have a chance to complete it. I think that's particularly important as we move on from a face-to-face to an online environment. But I certainly, after a week or two, sometimes I do have things sunset because I don't want people thinking they can do the work later in the semester, for example. So I hit submit, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so this is what you get, okay? This is what the students will see as long as you have it be visible. And if you want to edit it, it's just like editing anything else in Blackboard. You go down to that drop-down menu, you click Edit, and you can make whatever changes you want. You can make it visible to students, not visible to students, etc. Just going to look at that drop-down menu for a sec. You can also make it unavailable if you're still working on it. You can copy it, move it, do things like that, change the due date, etc. Most of those features are within Edit, so I usually just use Edit. So then the benefit of creating a full VoiceThread assignment and having it be enabled in terms of the evaluation is that just like any other Blackboard assignment, it will show up for the student as something that needs to be graded. One of the things I would just always also say, which I didn't do here, I'll edit it, is I always do this I can't remember when we had to do, let's scroll down. So do I do March 26, 11:59 p.m. So, oops, little typo there. So I always do that up at the top. I'll just resubmit that so that it's really clear if somebody scrolls through their week 8 content when something is due. So if I want to now show you like what it would take for a student to create a VoiceThread, their experience would be that they would click on VoiceThread. VoiceThread would launch. We can do individual. I have to say in course view versus individual view in VoiceThread, I often see the same thing on both. I've been using VoiceThread for a couple years, but I'm by no means an expert, so if somebody gets this to work a little better, feel free to add it in the comments, like how to make that happen differently. Okay, so I am not seeing, I'm just going to refresh this for a sec. Yeah. So this is where I would just say that VoiceThread can be a little frustrating as it's packaged into Blackboard, is that sometimes things just are a little buggy and you have to refresh. So if I was a student, I would do add my own VoiceThread. I would create a new VoiceThread. I would add media. And there's a couple different ways you can do this. You actually should be able to drag and drop. I'm going to try doing the drag and drop for you guys. PDF test of VoiceThread. You can do a description, tags, etc. It'll take a minute to process. And then you can see what your PDF looks like. So I think this is one of the interesting things. I'm just going to try and add some more media. So what it looks like it's done is it's pulled the PDF apart into separate images. And I have had some faculty have issues with PDFs, and some people it's sort of flawless. So let's just try another one here. So we'll just find another example of student work as a PDF, and I'll just show you what that looks like. Oh, I just did the same one. That gives you the option to see that you can delete something. So just do one more time. I know this is getting a little long. And then it's the very end, the student does, it still did the other one. Let's see. So we have a little technical difficulty here, and I will say that it is not a seamless process. And maybe I'll just leave it here. Normally I don't have problems, especially with flat images, but I know that this video is getting a little long. So I'm just going to click Share and Return to Course to show you that this is what students would have to do. I have a pretty good video that's done by an outside partner, like that's done by somebody else in terms of how this works. Okay. So I think it's just there now. Let me see. Yep. Okay. So I did the sharing twice. And again, this is where I think the interface leaves a little bit to be desired. But honestly, I don't do a lot of uploading my own voice threads. After the first time students upload their voice threads, I don't really have a problem with it. And then we'll see. So here's the PDF. It did break it apart into separate spreads, but I do think it's still pretty easy to view. Oh, and here, the second one I actually did upload. I was just a little bit impatient. So that's the voice thread. I would use the comment tool like I showed you before with the audio comment here. And when you start doing the audio comment, you do get that option to do the drawing on the file as well. So I'm going to just go back to week 8. So I got there by clicking on the assignment and seeing what had been uploaded. This video ended up a little longer than I had hoped, but that's VoiceThread for you. And then I can click to see what the student has done. And I can go back to week 8. So hopefully this gives you a sense of how to create your own VoiceThread assignment and then what the student needs to do in order to populate that with their content. If you have any questions or want more specifics on a particular part of what I discussed, please add it into the comments. It's always a little difficult to decide how much is too much or how much is not enough. And stay tuned for more content. Okay, thanks.